Hello, investors. It's Don Vandenbord, Chief Investment Officer with Revere Asset Management. Today is Monday, June 9th, 6:25 p.m. Eastern Time, coming to you from St. Augustine Beach, Florida, with tonight's Revere Roundup Daily Market Insight video. Market state, we're in an uptrend since the April 22nd, 23rd back-to-back O'Neill follow-through days. Yes, they work, folks. Check the trend gauge over here. We've got three green arrows. Market leaders, plentiful and acting well. Short term, major indexes are above the 21-day moving average. Medium term, also above the 50-day moving average. Mixed bag relative to the 200-day moving average, as the NASDAQ 100 and the S&P 500 are above that level. A couple of other indexes testing it or near it. We'll take a closer look when we go through the charts. So what happened today? Tight action overnight after the weekend, tight action all day, but bulls staying firmly in charge. And we've got a new portfolio, new tracking portfolio, the Turbo 10. A lot of discussion in-house about how with GROTECTION growing, we may not have been paying enough attention in the 21-21 to some stocks that are certainly not mega caps, but certainly are on the lower side of liquidity. So the Turbo 10 is going to primarily focus on stocks that trade 500 million in daily dollar volume and below. The current cutoff for GROTECTION is 200 million in daily dollar volume, and that's rising as our assets rise. But that's why we've got the TurboTection portfolio, and we'll also start tracking 10 less liquid names that would be attractive. Three of them are owned in the TurboTection portfolio. So we'll 31 stocks to focus on starting Monday through the rest of the week, and we'll keep updating their performance. It's a good way to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in growth land, these two portfolios. And that's what we strive to do, is to stay on the right side of the market. If you haven't watched, I had a 2+ hour interview, Mike Webster, not interview, hanging out with Mike Webster on his Webby 5150 YouTube channel. We had a fantastic time discussing markets, and at the end, some rock and roll. We've both received very positive feedback from that. So check that out. It's a deep dive into the beginnings and the progress that Revere has made over the past 9 years. So what happened today? As I said, tight action. Here are the numbers. Bulls still in charge. 21-21 up an average of 0.79%, 11 up, 10 down. The Turbo 10 is a little bit on the high side because we didn't finalize the list until today, but up an average of 3.57%, 9 up, 1 down. The Big Eights, the RG8 plus Netflix up 0.71% on average, the RG8 up 0.39%. S&P 500 opened just about a tenth of a percent to the upside. That's where it closed. Equal weight, just barely positive. NASDAQ 100 opened up also about a tenth of a percent and closed slightly higher than that. Equal weight, pretty much in line. Dow basically flat, mid caps up a quarter, small caps up 0.6, global 60/40 stock and bond up 0.15, GROTECTION up 0.06%, TurboTection. Nice day for the aggressive portfolio today, up 0.74%. Let's get into the charts. Reminder, Ted talked about it in the video on Friday. We've expanded our social media presence. We're on YouTube, X, also now Instagram and TikTok. Look for @Revere Asset on YouTube. Search for Revere Asset, and please like, share, and sub our videos. We would appreciate it. So here we start into the S&P 500, and let's draw some lines here. We have been last time I did a video, Connor filled in for me Thursday, as that was when I filmed or when I recorded the hangout with Mike. But this tight range inside this 15-day tight range, we got a breakout there last week, a test of it on Thursday. Always Not always, but you frequently see a pullback to the pivot. This was with the Trump Elon feud going on. A distribution day resulted from that. But it bounced right where we wanted it to at the 8-day moving average, making new recovery highs and expanding our range that we're currently in now on the S&P 500. And nothing wrong with that. You're going to start to rapidly see the 50-day moving average increase its slope. And that's because these uh, tariff tantrum closes from little more than 10 weeks ago are starting to come off. If I go to the weekly chart of the S&P, you can see how this week has come off, and that caused a pretty sharp hookup on the weekly chart. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously, our preferred uh, stacking of the moving averages is 8 above the 21, above the 50, above the 200. We're probably at least 2 weeks away from the 50 coming up through the 200, assuming the market holds up, of course. NASDAQ 100, not a new recovery high that was made last Thursday before the reversal, but that reversal also bounced off the 8 EMA and two tight inside days relative to that big range on Thursday. Looking pretty good is the Nasdaq 100. Here's the equal weight S&P, still below the highs from a few weeks ago. Relative strength lagging, and that's because of the strength in the Nasdaq 100. Let's look at the equal weight Nasdaq 100. That made a higher high relative to the recent range. Let's move on to the Dow, the last of the big cap indexes, near the top of this 4 week range, forming a pretty nice base there. Let's go on to mid caps. Mid caps made a pass at the 200-day moving average about 4 weeks ago, trying to come up to that level again. And the Russell 2000 breakout of this range, higher highs, not higher, not above the 200-day moving average, but two back-to-back nice days on the Russell. That always increases our bullishness when we see small caps joining the party. So those are the major indexes. Go to inner asset correlation. We'll start with the VIX, which is below 20, a little bit of a pop on the VIX today. But 19 and a half is the long-term average of the VIX. Always want to see below that, and we'd like to see it get down around these 14, 15 levels. That's when the S&P does its best work, ideally all the way down to 11 or 10-ish. Let's go on to the dollar now. Dollar down slightly on the day, inside day. How did precious metals do? Gold tight day sitting on the 21-day moving average. Silver, high ho silver with the breakout last week, making a higher high today. And look at the volume on that. GDX is gold stocks. Big move up 6 sessions ago. Another higher high attempted last Thursday. It reversed. Still hasn't filled the gap, but near the bottom of this 6-day range now is silver. But heads very excited to tell you that Bitcoin is acting extremely well, broke a big downtrend line. So you can see this failed breakout here about 3 weeks ago. Maybe not enough of a handle put in, needed to do a little bit more rest, pulled back, and the requisite shakeout trying to break. I'm looking at IBIT, the most liquid of the ETFs, but it closed below here last Thursday, trying to shake people out. We use the 21-day average frequently for this. But we also use a 2 to 3% stop below that 21-day moving average to try to account for shakes like this. So we didn't lose any of our Bitcoin and recovered the 21 on Friday and a nice gap up today, up even more after hours today, but a very clear downtrend line break. We added to this in GROTECTION and our TurboTection portfolios today. On to bonds. Not a lot to report on bonds today. kind of flat both on the yield and the price. Price slightly higher. So yields down just a tad. There's the TYX and there's the TNX. All right, let's get to the tail of the tape after inner asset correlation. So the stochastics looking good for the major indexes and the RG8. A little bit of news today, some optimism on the U.S. China trade talks going on in London today. The keys coming into today, the range 5940 to 6,000 broke above that, so we'll be expanding that range for tomorrow. Also with the Qs 523 to 530, we closed above that, and we'll be increasing that range as well. Second day up after that breakout from the range, 10 days above the 80 EMA, 32 above the 21 EMA. Mostly tight action, as I said today. 3-hour base in the morning, a little bit of a move up. 3-hour base in the afternoon, mild fade into the close. S&P 500 ATR down to 1.22%. This was over 3.5% during the tariff tantrum sell-off. Some sectors today to the upside: semiconductor, oils, uranium, China, silver, gold, and gold and silver stocks. To the downside, the dollar, cyber stocks, and financials and utilities. Here are the GROTECTION holdings trades today. We stopped out of our last piece of Netflix. I've been talking about how we were actually looking to do that. Let me look at that chart very quickly. So the thing with this was it hit the pivot plus 20%. See how it kind of paused around that area. We trimmed some in here, trailed the rest with the 5-day moving, or sorry, the 8-day exponential moving average with a close below it today. See how it poked above the pivot plus 25%. Close below it today, we closed that position out for a very nice trade, but not so much on a relative basis. We're looking for more bang for the buck. We got about 1.2 times the S&P return during our holding period, which is actually less than we like to look for. We want to see 2 to 3% times what the S&P does during our holding period. So stopped out of the last piece of that. We did buy SOXL in GROTECTION and added to, as I said, Bitcoin and also to Hood. Here are the portfolio holdings from biggest to smallest, first by index, then sector, and then individual names. TurboTection was busy today. Bought ARM, SMR, and TEM, added to IBIT. So GROTECTION, volatility adjusted beta 1.26, 4.47 balance at risk. Turbo holdings similarly from highest to lowest, starting with the indexes, and Turbo with a hefty 2.05% RVAB, Revere Volatility Adjusted Beta, 6.88% to the downside. Bottom line on the day, tight overall action, bulls still in control. Keys for tomorrow, we expanded the range for the S&P to accommodate the new highs, and also for the NASDAQ, key that we do not break below the bottom of these ranges, or we will be getting more defensive, as that might indicate a bit of a pullback in the market. And then, of course, that's the indexes. We also have stops in place for all of our individual names. Speaking of our individual names, let's start with the new Turbo 10 today. And we'll start off with 3 that are owned in the TurboTection portfolio run by Ted and Connor. Rocket Lab, big move out today, a little bit of a squat, but still up 2.5%. LEU, nice buy and profitable for the fellas. Bought this last week, making higher highs. SMR started today. Nice consolidation on this one. These alternative energy stocks have been acting very well since the U.S. making a renewed commitment to nuclear. Here's the rest of the Turbo 10. QUBT, breaking out of about a 4-week shelf. TMDX. This was something we owned in Grow when it was liquid enough to be owned in Grow. Nice relative strength, making higher highs. Gap up on their last earnings report and has continued to the upside. NBIS. This is one that's actually liquid for both portfolios. Very nice downtrend line break. Big day up on Thursday, inside day on Friday, higher highs today. SEZL, You got the sizzle and the steak with this one, just riding the 8 EMA higher. Lemonade, that cool, refreshing drink. Does anybody get that Eddie Murphy reference? When his Elvis impersonation, if you do, you're probably above 50 years old. But Lemonade looking good, poking above 40 today. HSAI in a nice tight triangle. And finally, an IPO base breakout today, sort of a short base, a little over 3 weeks, but it's a breakout nonetheless. eToro, Israel-based investment and social trading platform. It's basically the Israeli version of Hood, is how I've heard it explained. So that's the new Turbo 10 portfolio. Let's go to the 21 over 21 list. Again, green flag means we own it in-house. Palantir, nice recovery after the sell-off last Thursday. GE Vernova, note the relative strength, flagging a little bit. I'm keeping an eye on this. This is the first time it's tagged the 8 EMA and not quickly moved off of it. They don't go up forever, and it's shy of the profit zone, but the move really started with earnings, with it less than halfway above uh, where the base is. We got in after earnings. So it has done quite a strong move. It may just need to pull back to the 21 before it challenges the true profit taking zone. Hood, this was rumored to be added to the S&P 500 last week. When it didn't, it gapped down. It also had the rare analyst sell downgrade today, but look where it closed at the top of the range. Perfect undercut and reclaim of the 8-day moving average. Did that correspond with the 60-minute stochastic that I like? It did. So there it is, and that's why we added to this in GROTECTION today. And next up is HIMS, hanging out above this 21-day moving average after this big shakeout on a gap up and sell off after they announced an acquisition last week. Bros continues to ride the 8 EMA higher. Failed breakout last week is a little bit of a yellow flag, but recovering nicely as long as it continues to ride the 8. As I say, you can't complain about a stock riding the 8 EMA higher. You can, but you're being a little too uh, demanding if you are. Spotify pullback and bounce at the 8 today. Nvidia higher high since earnings, but squatted a little bit. CRDO not doing what I want it to do. So we bought this in the high 70s on the gap up day, watched it proceed to reverse, break the low of the gap day. The next day we trimmed half. And really just not getting going. Any strength has been sold. This is not what we want them to act like, but we're giving it a little bit of room. You can see the 8 EMA coming up to that. Frequently they touch that and then tick to the upside. Ibit talked about how we added to this. Zscaler just continues to be a beast, extended now. Carvana undercut reclaim of the 8-day moving average today. Chewy closed below the 8 after hitting the price target zone last week. Pivot plus 20%. Boeing higher highs. Excellent move there. CoreWeave continues to be a beast. AppLovin, uh, breaking. This was another one that was rumored to be added to the S&P 500. Some people piled in on that. It sold off when really they made no changes to the S&P 500 after hours on Friday, and this one's selling off 8%, kind of harsh. Uh, got an alert at 400. May take a stab at that. NRG tight, relatively weak, but still tight. So we're letting it, keeping it on the list for now. Toast tried to break higher today. Perfect action on a bounce off the 21-day moving average after its earnings gap. But we kind of want to see this one getting going. Tem, the fellas bought this one today, Ted and Connor. Looking good. Caught it. We've been stopped out of this a couple times, caught it right this time. This break of this little downtrend line here, closing in the upper part of the range. Uber coming back above the 21-day moving average, added back to the 21 over 21 list after we got stopped out of it a little over a week ago. Volume pretty nice on this rebound too. May take another shot at it. CEG uh, sold off. This was when they made so they already had an agreement with Microsoft. They made another agreement with Meta, but after further review, the market was a little bit disappointed with the margins that they're supposed to get off of that deal. But this is a leader. Bounced right where it needed to. The 21-day moving average squatted today when it tried to move out, but added back to the 21-21 list. And finally, Light, which is a fiber optic name, benefiting from the AI data centers. Put in a little flag, tried to break out, pulled back right to the 21.